Hey everyone, this is Mrs. Stewart-Lediard. Today in this short presentation, I am going to teach you how to evaluate digital information. As you can see in the objective, you will learn evaluation criteria to help you determine if sources are valid and can be used to support an argument. When you're doing research, we often go out to Google and use websites. However, we have to be very careful because Google has a lot of information and only some of it is truthful, valid, and can be used for research. Therefore, if you do use Google or Bing or Yahoo to look for websites when you're researching, you have to ask yourself some very critical questions about whether these websites can be trusted. And that's what you're going to learn today. The criteria that I'm going to teach you is just every time you click on a possible source or website to ask yourself who, what, where, when, and why. Let's start with where. What I mean by where is where does the website live? You may or may not have noticed that every website has a web address, just like google.com. The .com actually means something. Those are called domain endings, and each domain gives you a clue about what type of website it is. So if a website ends with .com, that stands for commercial. That means it's a business. It could be a site that's trying to sell you something. If a site ends in .edu, that means that it's an educational organization, such as a university. .gov stands for government. So that's a website that's been published by the government of the United States, or .org, which stands for organization. So you have to be careful with most of these domain endings. If a website ends in .net or .org or .com, you really want to maybe look a little bit further and try to find a better source, or look at it very carefully using the rest of the criteria I'm going to teach you. .edus and .govs, the reason I have those listed in red is because they are the most trustworthy out of those domains. All right, next is what. What deals with accuracy? So you're looking for clues to help you figure out whether or not the website is accurate and can be trusted. So one tip that I like to do is skim and scan the site and look for things like spelling errors. If there are spelling errors, that's a big red flag that it's not an academic site and you should not use that for a source. As far as sites that make claims, you'll want to make sure you try to find other sources that are making the same claims before you believe them to be fact. So I like to use the rule of 3. If you can find that same information that you're questioning on 3 sites, there's a better chance that it's accurate. However, if you go out to look for other sites and you can't find any other website making the same claim or what is supposed to be a fact, then you might want to question its credibility. All right, also under what is it valid? So this one's a little bit tough and it takes a lot of investigation and detective work. So what you're looking for with validity is it biased? And you may not have ever heard that word before, but if something's biased, that means it's taking a position or a side. So if I'm biased towards basketball and I say that's the most rigorous sport, and I don't really have any evidence to back that up, that's showing that I'm biased. I'm kind of taking my own opinion into account instead of facts. So there's a lot of websites out there that are biased, and they want to get you to believe something or try to persuade you to think a certain way, but they are not providing the evidence to back it up. So that's what we have to be careful of. One way to help you spot bias is to ask yourself, well, what's the purpose of this site? So sometimes if they're trying to sell you something or trying to persuade you to think or believe a certain way, those are really good clues that it's a biased site. Here's an example. I want you to look at this website, and I'm going to ask you to report back what are some of the clues that you can see by looking closely at this site that it is a biased source that might not be the best to use for research. So now that you've had a chance to look at that site, I'm going to point out a couple and see if they match what you put. So when I look at this site, I look at the language that they use. So they use a lot of opinion words like sport hunting is cruel. That's an opinion-based word, and it's not backed up with facts. So that's a clue to me that this is a biased site. Another is the fact that they have a statement at the top that says animals are not ours, and the word not is in bold, and it's really trying to appeal to our anger and our emotions instead of reason and facts. So when you see statements that really you believe that they're there just to try to get you angry or upset or emotional, instead of using facts to make the argument, there's another clue as well. So let's move on. The next question that you will want to look for is who posted it or who wrote this information. And you have to ask yourself, are they even qualified to write on the topic? So I know there are a lot of blogs and things on the internet, but blogs can be posted by anybody, even an elementary school student. So if you're doing academic research, you probably don't want to use something like a blog unless that person is a respected authority in that area. So try to find who wrote it. Look for contact information. Look for credentials. Do they have, if it's an article about health, do they have MD at the end, which means that they're a medical doctor? Those are things that would give you clues to the fact that they are actually qualified to write and share that information. When you're looking for who, sometimes you have to, again, be a little detective, and sometimes it's not completely obvious. So you have to look for things that say contact us or who we are or meet us. These are all places where you can dig a little bit deeper to see if you can find out who wrote the information. Sometimes it's not an individual and sometimes it's an organization. So it wouldn't hurt to do a lateral search. What I mean by that is open up a new tab and research that organization and try to learn more about that organization to see if they're reputable and can be trusted. If you've never heard of them, that's something you should just automatically do. Look and see what you can find out from digging deeper onto another tab. All right, next is when was it posted? This one's usually pretty easy to find. You're looking for current information, unless you're doing something like historical-based research. So try to find a date when it was last updated. Try to find when it was published or posted. There's other places you can look for this information. A lot of times it's at the very top of the website or at the very bottom. So those are two common places where you can look to find the date. And then finally, your last question is why? Why would you use this site? Number one, make sure that it has the content for your research needs. So if you're doing an argument and you're looking for evidence to back up a claim, make sure that it has fact-based, solid research to back up those claims that you're looking for. Make sure it covers the topic that you are researching. Make sure that it meets your needs, that it's at a reading level that you can understand. So depending on time, you may be asked at this time to do some individual research. It's great to keep that who, what, where, when, why in the back of your mind. Every time you visit a website, and these will help you choose the most credible and valid resources.